The termination letter landed on my desk at exactly 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. They fired me. No warning. No meeting. Just a letter. And maybe you've been there too. Just 22 words that ended 6 years of my life. Due to restructuring needs, Martin Blackwood's employment with Apex Industries is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out. I stared at the paper, my hands steady as stone. Around me, the office buzzed with normal activity, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, people solving problems they thought mattered. But I knew something they didn't. I'd seen this coming for months. My name is Martin Blackwood, and I'd just been fired from the company I'd helped build from nothing into a $40 million consulting empire. Lucas Rivera, the new CEO, sat in his glass office watching me through the blinds. He wanted to see me break. Wanted to watch me beg or cry or rage. Instead, I folded the letter neatly, placed it in my jacket pocket, and stood up. I gathered my personal items, a coffee mug, a photo of my daughter, a small plant, and walked toward his office. Security was already moving, but I held up one finger. 1 minute. That's all I needed to deliver a message that would haunt Lucas for the rest of his miserable life. 6 years ago, Apex Industries was bleeding money and down to 12 employees. I was employee number 13, hired as a senior data analyst with promises of growth and partnership. The company specialized in supply chain optimization, but their methods were outdated and their technology was garbage. Within 3 months, I'd identified the core problems and designed a solution that would revolutionize how they operated. I called it the Quantum Analytics Platform, a machine learning system that could predict supply chain failures before they happened. I built it from scratch, working 18-hour days, coding through weekends, missing my daughter's soccer games. The platform was my baby, and it was brilliant. Within a year, our client retention shot up to 98%. Revenue tripled. Fortune 500 companies were lining up to work with us. Lucas Rivera joined the company 2 years later as VP of Operations. Harvard MBA, family money, the kind of guy who never built anything in his life but was great at taking credit for other people's work. He studied my platform like a blueprint, asking technical questions, sitting in on my client presentations, slowly learning everything I'd created. I thought he was just being thorough. I should have known he was planning to steal it all. The signs started 6 months ago. Lucas began hiring his Harvard buddies for senior positions, pushing out the old team one by one. My access to financial reports mysteriously disappeared. Client meetings happened without me. When I asked Lucas about it, he'd flash that perfect smile and say they were exploring new directions. Then came the patent applications. I found them by accident, buried in legal paperwork on a shared drive. Applications for predictive supply chain analytics and quantum business intelligence systems. My systems. My code. My 6 years of innovation. But Lucas had filed them under his name, claiming he was the inventor. The applications were dated 3 months ago, which meant he'd been planning this theft for at least that long. I printed everything, saved copies, documented timestamps. If Lucas wanted to play games, I'd make sure I had all the evidence I needed. That night, I stayed up until dawn researching intellectual property law and planning my counterattack. Lucas thought he was stealing from someone who would just roll over and take it. He was about to learn how wrong he was about that. And about me. I knocked on Lucas's office door and walked in without waiting for permission. He was leaning back in his leather chair, feet up on the desk, looking like he owned the world. "Martin," he said, not bothering to stand. "I heard you got the news. Sorry it had to be this way, but business is business." I set my cardboard box down and pulled out my phone. "I need you to listen very carefully, Lucas. In about 5 minutes, you're going to receive a call from Morrison Electronics. They're our biggest client, worth about $12 million annually." His smile faltered slightly. "What are you talking about?" "They're going to tell you that unless certain conditions are met, they're canceling their contract effective immediately. That call will be followed by similar calls from Hartwell Manufacturing, Global Tech Solutions, and Pacific Logistics. Together, those 4 clients represent 60% of your revenue. Lucas's feet came off the desk. You can't, that's corporate sabotage. I'll sue you into bankruptcy. I smiled for the first time all day. Sue me for what? Having personal relationships with clients? You see, Lucas, something you never understood about this business is that clients don't work with companies. They work with people. And those people just lost their reason to stay with Apex Industries. His phone started ringing. Right on schedule. Lucas stared at his ringing phone like it was a live grenade. Morrison Electronics. Flashed on the caller ID. I could see the panic creeping into his eyes as he realized I wasn't bluffing. Answer it, I said quietly. He grabbed the phone with shaking hands. Morrison Electronics, yes, hello Mr. Morrison. What? No, that can't be. But we have a contract. His face went pale as he listened. I checked my watch. That's 1 down. 3 to go. Oh, and Lucas? You might want to check your email. I sent something to the board of directors about 20 minutes ago. His eyes snapped to his computer screen. I'd sent them everything. The stolen patent applications, documentation of his plagiarism, evidence that he'd been systematically removing the actual creators of our technology while claiming credit for their work. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was what I'd been building for the past 6 months while Lucas thought he was so clever. I'd been preparing for this exact moment, documenting everything, planning every move. Because I knew something Lucas didn't. I wasn't just an employee. I was the person who actually understood how this business worked. And I'd been planning to take it all away from him since the day I found those patent applications. You want to know the beautiful thing about intellectual property law, Lucas? I said, watching him frantically click through emails. When someone files patents on work they didn't create, using documentation they stole, it's not just theft. It's fraud. Federal fraud. His phone rang again. That'll be Hartwell Manufacturing. I turned toward the door, then paused. Oh, one more thing. Remember how you thought you were being clever, gradually reducing my access to systems? Well, I've been gradually moving my real work somewhere else. The quantum analytics platform you think you own? What you have is a shell. The actual algorithm, the real code, the proprietary data models, I took all of that with me months ago. Lucas jumped up from his chair. That's impossible. We have backups, redundancies, you have what I left you. Which is basically a very expensive calculator that can't actually predict anything. Good luck explaining that to clients. His face was red now, veins bulging in his forehead. I'll destroy you. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I opened his office door and looked back one final time. Lucas, by tomorrow morning, I won't need to work in this industry. I'll own it. Then I walked out, leaving him with his ringing phone and his worthless pile of stolen code that wouldn't work without me. The elevator ride to the parking garage felt like floating. 6 years of frustration, of watching Lucas climb over people's backs, of seeing him steal credit for other people's work, it was all about to pay off in ways he couldn't imagine. My phone was buzzing constantly. Text messages from former colleagues who'd heard the news. Voicemails from headhunters. But I ignored them all. I had bigger plans. I drove straight to downtown Denver, to a building Lucas had never been inside. The 20th floor housed the offices of Meridian Solutions, Apex Industries' biggest competitor. They'd been struggling for years, bleeding clients to companies like ours, slowly going bankrupt. Their technology was outdated, their leadership was weak, but they had something valuable, existing relationships with Apex's competitors and a burning desire to get back into the game. I'd been meeting with Meridian's owner, Jackson Webb, for the past 3 months. Quietly. Carefully. Building trust, sharing ideas, laying the groundwork for something bigger. Jackson was a good man who'd built his company on solid principles but couldn't compete with the new breed of tech-savvy consultants. He was also desperate enough to listen to a very interesting proposal I'd been preparing. A proposal that would change everything for both of us. Jackson Webb was waiting in the conference room when I arrived. 62 years old, gray beard, tired eyes that had seen too many battles. His company was 3 months from bankruptcy, and he knew it. "Martin," he said, standing to shake my hand. "I heard about what happened at Apex. I'm sorry." "Don't be," I said, setting my briefcase on the table. "Today's the best thing that ever happened to me. And possibly to you, too." I opened the briefcase and pulled out a folder thick with documents. "Jackson, what if I told you there was a way to not just save Meridian Solutions, but turn it into the dominant force in supply chain consulting? What if I could give you the technology to crush every competitor, starting with Apex Industries?" His eyebrows raised. "I'd say you better start talking." I spread the documents across the table. Financial projections, technical specifications, client contact lists, market analysis. Everything I'd been preparing for months. "I want to buy Meridian Solutions. Not acquire it, not merge with it. Buy it outright. I'll pay off all your debts, keep every employee, and invest $10 million in new technology. In return, I become the majority owner and CEO." Jackson stared at the papers. "Martin, where did you get $10 million? I smiled. "Let's just say I've been very good at managing my money. The question is, do you want to go out of business in 3 months, or do you want to watch me destroy the people who've been stealing your clients for years?" Jackson was quiet for a long time, studying the documents, running calculations in his head. Finally, he looked up. "Martin, this is generous. More than generous. But I have to ask, what's the catch? What do you really want?" I leaned back in my chair. "Revenge. Pure and simple. Lucas Rivera stole 6 years of my work and tried to take credit for everything I built. He fired me to cover his tracks and probably thought that was the end of it. I want to show him what happens when you try to destroy someone who's smarter than you are. And you think buying my company is the way to do that? I don't think it, Jackson. I know it. Because I didn't just bring you $10 million. I brought you something worth $100 million. I pulled out a laptop and opened it on the table. This is the real quantum analytics platform. The actual code that made Apex Industries successful. Lucas thinks he owns it, but what he has is a fake version I've been maintaining for months. The real platform, the one that actually works, belongs to me. And now it's going to belong to Meridian Solutions." Jackson's eyes widened as he looked at the screen. "You're talking about industrial espionage. Theft of intellectual property." "No," I said firmly. "I'm talking about taking back what was stolen from me first. Every line of code on this system was written by me, on my own time, using my own equipment. I have documentation proving it. Lucas committed fraud when he filed those patents. I'm just correcting the record." Jackson started laughing. Not a happy laugh, a bitter, knowing laugh. "You know what, Martin? I've been in this business for 30 years. I've watched people like Lucas Rivera come in with their fancy degrees and family money, steal ideas from hardworking people, and then act like they invented everything themselves. If you can really do what you're saying, if you can really bring down Apex Industries, then hell yes, I'm in." We shook hands across the table, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months: hope. By Friday, we announced that Meridian Solutions had acquired breakthrough technology and was ready to take on new clients. The 3 remaining Apex clients called within hours. By Thursday morning, the paperwork was signed and the money was transferred. Meridian Solutions was officially mine, though Jackson stayed on as president and kept his entire team. I spent the day meeting with employees, explaining the transition, and outlining our new strategy. The mood in the office went from funeral to celebration in about 6 hours. Meanwhile, across town, Apex Industries was imploding. Lucas had lost 4 major clients in 2 days, and the board was asking uncomfortable questions about the stolen patents. My email to them had included enough evidence to trigger an internal investigation, complete with depositions and forensic accounting. But that was just the beginning. Thursday evening, I made my first move as CEO of Meridian Solutions. I called Morrison Electronics, Apex's former biggest client. Mr. Morrison, this is Martin Blackwood. I believe you recently ended your relationship with Apex Industries. I'd like to offer you something better. Martin. I was hoping you'd call. When Lucas couldn't explain why their system suddenly stopped working, we knew something was wrong. What do you have in mind? How about the same analytics platform that made Apex successful, but improved and backed by the person who actually created it? Plus, I can offer you a 20% reduction in fees and guaranteed response times. There was a pause. When can we start? One phone call, 15 minutes, and I just signed a $12 million contract. The client Lucas thought he'd stolen from me had just become the foundation of his destruction. Friday brought more good news. Hartwell Manufacturing and Global Tech Solutions both signed contracts with Meridian, bringing our revenue to over $25 million in less than a week. Word was spreading through the industry. The real genius behind Apex's success was now working somewhere else. But the best part was watching Lucas scramble. According to my sources still inside Apex, he'd been working 18-hour days trying to fix the broken code I'd left behind. The system would run for a few hours, produce some basic reports, then crash with error messages he couldn't understand. Clients were getting corrupted data, missed predictions, and system failures during critical operations. Lucas had tried hiring emergency contractors to fix the problems, but none of them could figure out why the code wasn't working. That's because the code was designed to fail without the encryption keys I'd built into the real system. Keys that only I possessed. By Friday afternoon, Pacific Logistics became the fourth major client to jump ship from Apex to Meridian. Their contract was worth $8 million annually. In 5 days, I'd taken $45 million in business away from Lucas Rivera. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Friday evening, I sent Lucas an email with a simple subject line. Congratulations on your new role. Inside was a link to a press release I'd had prepared, announcing my acquisition of Meridian Solutions and our aggressive expansion plans. The press release went viral in the business community over the weekend. Former Apex Industries analyst acquires competitor, promises to revolutionize supply chain consulting. The article detailed my background, my role in developing the technology that made Apex successful, and my plans to use that same technology to dominate the market. By Monday morning, my phone was ringing constantly. Reporters wanted interviews. Potential clients wanted meetings. Industry analysts wanted to understand how a mid-level employee had suddenly become a major player overnight. But the call I was waiting for came at 10:30 a.m. Martin Blackwood's office. My new assistant answered. "One moment, please." She transferred the call to me with a smile. "It's Lucas Rivera from Apex Industries. He sounds upset." I let it ring 3 more times before picking up. "Martin Blackwood, CEO of Meridian Solutions. How can I help you?" There was heavy breathing on the other end. Then, "You son of a bitch. You think you're so clever, don't you? Lucas. Good to hear from you. How's the new CEO position working out? I heard you've had some challenges with client retention lately. You sabotaged our systems. You stole our clients. You destroyed 6 years of work. I corrected 6 years of theft," I said calmly. "The work was mine, Lucas. I created it, I built it, I owned it. You just had temporary access. I'll sue you for everything you're worth." "With what money? And what lawyer?" "Last I heard, your revenue was down about 80%. The silence on the phone was beautiful. I could practically hear Lucas's world crumbling around him. "Here's what's going to happen, Lucas," I continued. "You're going to spend the next few months trying to rebuild what you stole from me. But you can't, because you never understood how it actually worked. You were just a front man, taking credit for other people's intelligence. The board will never let you get away with this." "The board?" I laughed. "Lucas, the board fired you this morning. Check your email." I'd been in contact with 2 Apex board members since Tuesday, providing them with evidence of Lucas's fraud and mismanagement. They'd been planning his removal for days. This isn't over, Martin. Oh, but it is. See, while you've been scrambling to fix broken code and explain missing clients to angry board members, I've been building something bigger. I'm buying your debt, Lucas. All of it. Your business loans, your office lease, your equipment financing. By the end of this week, I'll own everything you thought belonged to you. The line went dead. Lucas had hung up, but that was fine. He'd be hearing from me again very soon. Buying Apex's debt was surprisingly easy when you had the right connections and enough cash. By Wednesday, I owned the notes on their office building, their equipment leases, and their primary business loan. The total cost was $12 million, a bargain considering it gave me complete control over Lucas's ability to operate. Wednesday afternoon, I paid Lucas a visit at his office. Or rather, my office now. Security tried to stop me at the front desk, but I showed them the ownership papers. I'm the new landlord, I explained. Just checking on my property. Lucas was in his office, my office, frantically working on his computer when I walked in. He looked up and his face went white. You can't be here. This is private property. Actually, it's my property now. I bought it yesterday. I handed him an official notice. Consider this your 30-day eviction notice. Rent is now tripled, by the way. Market rates. Lucas read the paper, his hands shaking. This is impossible. You can't just buy. I can, and I did. I also bought your equipment leases and your credit lines. Funny thing about business loans, when they're called in early, the full amount becomes due immediately. You have 72 hours to pay $14 million, or everything gets repossessed. I don't have $14 million. I know. Your business account has about $40,000 left, and that's after you laid off half your staff this week. I sat down in the chair across from his desk, my desk now. But I'm not unreasonable, Lucas. I'm prepared to offer you a deal. Lucas stared at me with a mixture of hatred and desperation. What kind of deal? A simple one. You publicly admit that you stole my work, falsified patents, and built your career on fraud. You send a written apology to every client you lied to, every employee you cheated, and every board member you deceived. You do this in the form of a press release that gets distributed to every major business publication in the country. And if I do that, I'll give you enough money to pay off your debts and disappear quietly. Maybe you can start over somewhere else, doing something you're actually qualified for. Lucas's face was red with anger. You want me to destroy my own reputation. Lucas, your reputation is already destroyed. Half the industry knows you're a fraud. The other half will figure it out when your company goes bankrupt next week. I'm offering you a chance to leave with some dignity intact. What's to stop me from just declaring bankruptcy and walking away? I smiled and pulled out my phone. Because bankruptcy won't help you with this. I showed him the screen. It was an FBI webpage about corporate fraud investigations. See, when I sent that evidence to your board of directors, I also sent copies to some friends at the bureau. Turns out, falsifying patent applications is a federal crime. So is using fraudulent technology to secure government contracts. Remember that Defense Department deal you signed last month? Lucas's face went completely pale. They've opened a formal investigation, Lucas. Patent fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud. You're looking at federal prison time unless you cooperate with their investigation. And the best way to cooperate is to tell the truth about what you did. I watched Lucas process the information, saw the exact moment he realized how completely trapped he was. You planned all this, he said quietly. From the beginning. Not from the beginning. I didn't start planning to destroy you until I found those patent applications with your name on them. But once I realized what kind of person you really were, yes, I planned every detail. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. You see, Lucas, you made a fundamental error. You assumed I was just another employee you could push around and steal from. You never bothered to find out who you were really dealing with. What do you mean? I mean you never asked about my background before Apex. You never wondered how a mid-level analyst could afford to buy a $10 million company with cash. My father owns 3 software companies in Silicon Valley. My brother runs a venture capital firm. My sister is a federal prosecutor specializing in white-collar crime. I have an MIT degree in computer science and a Stanford MBA. I could have started my own company 6 years ago, but I wanted to prove I could build something from the ground up. Lucas was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. If you'd just been honest, if you'd given me credit for my work and treated people with respect, I probably would have left quietly and started my own company. We might have even been partners someday. But you couldn't do that, could you? You had to steal, had to lie, had to try to erase me completely. Lucas slumped in his chair. What do you want me to do? I already told you. Full confession, public apology, complete acknowledgement of what you did. Do that, and I'll make sure you have enough money to disappear and start over somewhere else. Refuse, and you'll be fighting federal charges without any money for legal defense. How long do I have to decide? 24 hours. Tomorrow at 5 p.m., you either send me a draft of your confession, or I call my sister and tell her to stop being nice to you. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Lucas? Pack your personal items tonight. Tomorrow, this office becomes the new Denver headquarters for Meridian Solutions. I'll be moving in on Friday. I left him sitting there, staring at the ownership papers, finally understanding that he'd lost everything. Thursday evening, exactly 24 hours later, my email chimed with a message from Lucas Rivera. The subject line read, "Confession and apology as requested." I'd opened it and found exactly what I'd demanded, a complete admission of guilt, acknowledging that he'd stolen my work, falsified patents, and built his career on fraud. The apology was thorough, professional, and completely devastating to his reputation. But what made it perfect was the last paragraph. I fully understand that my actions constitute federal crimes, and I am prepared to cooperate completely with any investigation into my conduct. I take full responsibility for the harm I have caused to Martin Blackwood, to Apex Industries, and to the clients who trusted technology they believed I had created. I forwarded the confession to my sister at the FBI, to the business journalists who'd been following the story, and to every major industry publication I could think of. By Friday morning, it was front-page news in the business section of every major newspaper. Apex CEO admits to massive fraud, apologizes to victims. The article detailed everything: the stolen patents, the falsified credentials, the systematic theft of intellectual property. Lucas Rivera went from respected CEO to industry pariah overnight. But the best part was yet to come. Friday afternoon, I held my first press conference as CEO of Meridian Solutions. Standing in the lobby of our new headquarters, the former Apex building, I announced our expansion plans to a room full of reporters and industry analysts. Today marks a new chapter for Meridian Solutions, I began, looking directly into the cameras. We're not just acquiring office space. We're acquiring the talent, the client relationships, and the infrastructure needed to become the dominant force in supply chain consulting. Behind me stood 12 former Apex employees, the best engineers, analysts, and consultants Lucas had left behind. People who'd been lied to, cheated, and blamed for Lucas's failures. People who are now part of my team. Over the past week, we've signed contracts worth over $60 million. I continued. We're projecting $200 million in revenue within 18 months, making us the largest independent consulting firm in the industry. A reporter raised her hand. Mr. Blackwood, some people are saying this was all planned revenge against Lucas Rivera. How do you respond to that? I smiled. I respond by saying that Mr. Rivera's confession speaks for itself. He stole intellectual property, committed fraud, and built his career on lies. I simply corrected the record and gave clients access to the real technology they thought they were buying all along. What happens to Apex Industries now? Another reporter asked. Apex Industries filed for bankruptcy this morning. Their remaining assets will be liquidated to pay creditors. As for Mr. Rivera himself, that's between him and the federal prosecutors who are reviewing his case. I could see Lucas in the back of the crowd, standing near the exit, looking like a ghost of his former self. Our eyes met for just a moment, and I saw complete defeat in his expression. He turned and walked away, knowing he'd never set foot in this building again. 6 months later, Meridian Solutions had grown to over 200 employees and annual revenue of $150 million. We'd acquired 3 smaller consulting firms, developed new AI-powered analytics platforms, and signed exclusive contracts with half of the Fortune 500. I was featured on the cover of Business Week as the entrepreneur who turned betrayal into billions. Lucas Rivera had completely disappeared from the business world, his career effectively over. But my story wasn't complete yet. There was still one more person who needed to understand the consequences of their actions. Dr. Patricia Hendricks, Lucas's former business school professor, had been quoted in several articles defending him as a brilliant strategist who simply made some poor ethical choices. She'd also been the one who'd recommended Lucas for the job at Apex in the first place. So I decided to pay her a visit at Harvard Business School. Not as a vengeful ex-employee, but as a successful CEO with a very generous donation offer. Dr. Hendricks was delighted to meet with me in her Cambridge office. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, shaking my hand warmly, "I've been following your remarkable success story. Quite inspiring, really." "Thank you, Professor. I appreciate that. I'm here because I want to make a substantial donation to the business school, specifically to fund a new program on ethical leadership." Her eyes lit up. "How substantial are we talking about?" $5 million. She nearly fell out of her chair. $5 million? That's incredibly generous. What would you want the program to focus on? I pulled out a folder and set it on her desk. I wanted to focus on the real-world consequences of unethical behavior in business. Case studies of fraud, theft of intellectual property, abuse of power. I want students to understand that actions have consequences, not just for companies, but for individuals. That sounds excellent. Very timely, given some of the corporate scandals we've seen lately. Exactly. In fact, I'd like the first case study to focus on Lucas Rivera, your former student. Dr. Hendricks shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm not sure it would be appropriate to teach students about the consequences of fraud? About what happens when someone steals other people's work and tries to build a career on lies." I opened the folder and spread out newspaper clippings, court documents, and FBI reports. "Professor, your student committed multiple federal crimes. He destroyed lives, stole millions of dollars worth of intellectual property, and nearly brought down an entire company. Don't you think future business leaders should understand how that happened?" Dr. Hendricks stared at the documents, her face growing pale as she read the FBI reports and fraud convictions. "I had no idea it was this serious," she whispered. "Professor, you recommended Lucas for a senior position at a company where he had access to proprietary technology and client information. Did you ever verify his claims about his accomplishments? Did you check his academic record? Did you investigate any of the projects he claimed to have led?" We trusted his word. He was very convincing, very confident. He was a fraud. And your recommendation gave him the credibility he needed to steal 6 years of my work. I gathered up the documents and put them back in the folder. "Here's what's going to happen, Professor. You're going to establish the Lucas Rivera ethics case study as part of the required curriculum for all MBA students. You're going to teach them exactly what he did, how he did it, and what the consequences were. You're going to make sure that future business leaders understand that stealing other people's work isn't aggressive strategy, it's criminal fraud. And if I refuse? Then I donate my $5 million to Stanford instead, along with a detailed report about how Harvard Business School's faculty recommendations enabled a convicted fraudster to steal intellectual property and destroy lives. I'm sure the business press would find that very interesting." Dr. Hendricks was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. The Lucas Rivera ethics case study it is. Excellent. I'll have my lawyers draw up the donation agreement. I stood to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Professor? Make sure you mention in the case study that the person Lucas stole from eventually bought his company and destroyed his career. I want students to understand that sometimes, justice isn't just about legal consequences. Sometimes it's about being smarter, more prepared, and more determined than the people who try to destroy you. 2 years later, I was giving the keynote speech at the National Business Ethics Conference. My company had grown to over 500 employees and was valued at $1 billion. We'd revolutionized supply chain consulting and expanded into AI development, predictive analytics, and business intelligence software. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of CEOs, academics, and government officials, I told my story. The theft, the betrayal, the systematic planning of my revenge, and the ultimate triumph of justice over fraud. The lesson here isn't that revenge is the answer to workplace betrayal, I concluded. The lesson is that competence, preparation, and ethical behavior will always defeat fraud and theft in the long run. Lucas Rivera thought he could steal my work and erase me from the story. Instead, he taught me that sometimes the best response to betrayal is to build something so successful that your enemies destroy themselves trying to compete with you. The audience gave me a standing ovation. Afterward, a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. Mr. Blackwood, I'm being discriminated against at my job because I reported sexual harassment. Your story gives me hope that things can get better. I handed her my business card. If you're qualified and you're being mistreated, send me your resume. Meridian Solutions is always looking for people with integrity and courage. That's when I realized the real victory wasn't destroying Lucas Rivera. It was building something that could help other people who were facing the same challenges I'd faced. 5 years after that termination letter landed on my desk, I was named CEO of the Year by Business Insider. Meridian Solutions had grown into a global consulting empire worth $3 billion, with offices on 4 continents and over 2,000 employees. We'd acquired 6 major competitors, developed breakthrough AI technology, and revolutionized how businesses think about supply chain optimization. Lucas Rivera had tried to start his own company twice, both times failing within months when potential clients discovered his history. The ethics case study bearing his name at Harvard ensured that every MBA student in the country knew exactly who he was and what he'd done. He was working as a middle manager at a mid-sized accounting firm, making less than I'd earned as his employee 6 years earlier. The termination letter that was supposed to end my career had instead launched an empire. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so successful that your betrayers become footnotes in your success story.
If this story got you thinking, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that hit deep, and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And hey, if you know someone who needs to hear this one, share it with them. Thanks for watching.